But yeah, so the things that we're going to talk about today is why some companies that are great employers may end up with bad ratings and reviews, because that actually happens more than you think. At Mobrim, we talk to so many companies in so many different industries, and it's pretty common to have a company that has a great ENPS score. They've got good culture, but for some reason, they're just not able to reflect that in their public ratings and reviews. So we're going to talk about why that happens more often than you would think. We're also going to talk about how to fix that with some very specific things that you can apply to your efforts right away to increase the quality and quantity of the reviews that you're getting on Glassdoor and Indeed and other platforms. And we'll wrap up with 6 actionable steps that you can take back to your team and apply as kind of a checklist items of things to do. So I'm very focused on application. And so that's what this presentation is going to give you. We'll kind of skip this because Michael already had done the intro. I guess one thing I would mention is my wife and I also do have a podcast, The Culture Profit, where we interview some really cool people related to why putting people first is good for business. And there's some more great content there you can get for free. Okay, so these are going to be the 3 key pieces and how we're going to chunk today's training into these sections. First, we're going to talk about the why. Why should you ask for employee reviews, and how that's the number one element to strengthen and protect your reputation in this age of showcased culture where anyone and everyone can look up what your ratings and reviews are. Number 2, we're going to talk about the how. How are we going to do this in practice? We're going to talk about some do's and some don'ts, both for compliance and for strategy to increase the performance of your review request program. And then 3 is kind of bringing it home with just those action items to get started with your program. So to give you a little context of where this training is coming from, where we're getting these pieces of advice. So I wrote this book, The Review Cycle. It's the result of about 4.5 years of research. I actually started in the e-commerce side of feedback, managing product reviews on sites like Amazon, Overstock, Wayfair, all of these different e-commerce platforms. And after a couple of years of doing this, managing hundreds of product listings, I went to my CEO at the time, the company I was working for, and said, hey, what if we open a Glassdoor profile and you let me and my team apply some of the strategies we've been using for customer feedback to employee feedback? And he was on board and let us do that. And within the second year of applying some of the strategies that we were using on the customer side, we were able to rank in the top 10 best places to work on Glassdoor's list that year. And it was like an immediate impact to the employer. We saw the number of applications we were getting per job at the time go from around 20 to about 100. So times 5. There was this like stamp of validation from Glassdoor that we were actually a best place to work. And it's very credible in a national ranking. We also saw engagement go up. We saw the pride and excitement go up from employees because they saw that someone else had said it's a great place to work based on those ratings and reviews. And they saw everyone knocking on the door to get in. And so there was more of a motive to really kind of defend their position and do a great job. And so productivity also went up. And we went on to win several more awards that kept that momentum going based on some of the strategies that we're going to be talking about today. The kind of bigger picture of today's conversation fits into my model, the review cycle, where essentially this is the name of the book, but it's also the name of the decision-making model that I developed. The outside of the circle right here are the steps of consideration when you go to make a purchase, whether that's buying a vacuum on Amazon or applying for a new job. We first consider what the options are. We say, I need a vacuum or I need a job. Now I'm in the consideration phase. Engage with OGC is the organizational generated content. That's the branded content that the company puts out. So it's the product listing for the vacuum, or it's the career page for your brand, for your employer. And when a job seeker or a customer feels good about that, they like the features of the vacuum, they like the benefits that you offer at your employer, they want to validate that decision with user-generated content. They want to look at the reviews. They want to look at unboxing videos. They want to see what people are saying about working there on LinkedIn and other places. And when they feel that other people say this is a good place and they feel validated, they're going to progress to that purchase moment where they buy the vacuum or they apply to the job. And after that, assuming they are hired or, the vacuum arrives, they have their own lived post decision experience with using the vacuum or being an employee. And once this has gone on for a while, they have the opportunity to share a review at this point, which fundamentally changes the content that other people see. And because we make decisions on repeat, and all of these other consumers and job seekers are making similar decisions at the same time, this model is cyclical to reflect that. That's one thing to understand those 4 stages of decision making, but it's another thing to influence it. And the review cycle talks about these elements of influence on the inside. So asking for reviews is the element of influence over the post decision phase. Responding to reviews is the element of influence for engaging with UGC to showcase our care with strategic replies, which increases conversion rates. Harvesting insights is the element of influence over your branded content. As we learn from that feedback from reviews, we can reverse engineer our better employer branding content. We can reverse engineer better feature descriptions on our product listing on Amazon. It's the same general principle here, but we're using that voice of our customer or employee to engineer better marketing material and better experiences. And then marketing with reviews, we want to actually use reviews and review stats to funnel more people to consider our option as kind of that top of sales funnel function, because what they say about us is way more influential than what we say about ourselves. So in today's training, we're going to hyper focus on the specifics of this step of the review cycle. Ask for reviews. It's the first step that fuels everything else, because if we don't ask for reviews, we don't have reviews to reply to or learn from or market with. So this is really the number one key it's the best lever we can pull to protect our ratings and reviews. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is. So let's jump into the why principle. Okay, so there are definitely a ton of stats out there about the impact of reviews. It goes without saying that just about everybody uses reviews for decision making, whether it's shopping for a product, picking which restaurant you're going to go to this weekend, finding a hotel for your next vacation. We all use these reviews, but it's incredibly impactful with how much we as consumers trust reviews. So HubSpot did this study a while ago about the trustworthiness of different business professionals, and they found that doctors are the most trusted professional. 49% of consumers trust their doctor. It's kind of crazy that it's not higher. So about 1 out of 2 people trust their doctor. And this research article goes through all these different professions. Down near the bottom was salespeople and marketers are only trusted at 3%, and politicians are at 1%. And I'll let you guys guess where HR professionals fit along that spectrum. But it's really important to call out the salespeople and marketers only at 3%. Those are the individuals that are trying to persuade you to purchase. And in the use case of hiring, talent acquisition, and employer branding, your recruiter functions as a salesperson, right? You're selling the role, you're selling the company. And so when you tell not a prospect, but a job seeker, this is a great place to work, I love working here, all those things, you only have a 3% influence. But when you shift that conversation from what I like about working here to this is what we've seen our employees say in ratings and reviews, then we have trust arbitrage, and we can get that influence all the way up to 85%, which is surpassing even the most trusted professional of a doctor. So that's why using reviews in marketing is way more efficient than any message that we could say for ourselves. And to just kind of continue that example of how impactful reviews are, 1 star change in Yelp can impact a business's revenue 5 to 9%. And on Amazon, a 0.1 star difference can actually double a product's revenue or cut it in half. And that's because on Amazon, they round by their displayed star rating. So a 4.2 rounds down to a displayed 4 star, and a 4.3 rounds up to a displayed 5 star. So that 0.1 star difference, and I've seen this many times in real life, and it happens in real time too. Right when that one review comes through that, bumps you down or bumps you up, you can see the units sold doubling or cutting in half. When we talk about applications and the number of job seekers that are applying to our jobs, Glassdoor and Indeed, our ratings on these other platforms have a similar effect to dramatically increase or reduce the number of applicants that we're getting. And I'm not going to go through these one by one, but there are a lot of stats that also show the impact of employee reviews specifically on the job seeker, and how they're impacting retention as well. Because you've got to realize current employees are looking at your ratings and reviews as a comparison to where they could be as well. I think probably the most significant and kind of shocking stat is this one right here. A 1-star Glassdoor improvement equates to 7.8% to 18.9% higher stock market valuations, because your ratings and reviews on the employer side are a reflection of the quality of service that your team provides. And it also spills over to impacting profitability and business growth as well. So this conversation around caring about your employer reputation, strengthening your employer ratings and reviews, it's not just this linear conversation for talent acquisition. There's certainly more at stake and more opportunity than just improving our recruiting. And we may ask ourselves, well, why is this? It really comes back to this principle of perception is reality. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes. There's this guy named Lee Atwater. He's the guy standing on the right. He was the presidential campaign manager for George W. Bush Sr. And he dramatically changed the way that presidential campaigns are run in the US. Instead of taking an objective side on an issue that was being debated, they would actually go out and they attempted to measure with the tools that they had at the time the sentiment or belief of voters. And whichever side was more believed was the easier side to win, and that's the side they would take. So if you were to say, military spending, should we increase or decrease military spending? Decrease was the objective right answer based on, hard data that was available, but more people believed increasing was the thing to do. They would argue that side, and ultimately their strategy prevailed because he did become the president. So he is a master of awareness and social engineering and understanding perceptions, opinions, and beliefs. And a lot of the principles that he talks about in some of his research apply to consumer behavior and job seeker behavior when it comes to ratings and reviews. Those are the data points that people have public access to, and that's what's shaping people's perceptions and beliefs about you as an employer, regardless if you have great engagement scores or ENPS, because people don't see that information. They see the public stuff. So principle number one of why we should ask for reviews is ratings and reviews shape perceptions and behaviors. They're shaping how the job seeker sees you, the employee, and other people. And it's just too impactful to ignore and leave to chance. We have to proactively manage and monitor our ratings and reviews. The second principle here of why we should ask for reviews. This one's pretty crazy. So in a previous role at another company, I was tasked with researching a business that we were looking to acquire. And essentially what I found was they had really low ratings. They were at 2.6 stars pre-acquisition on Glassdoor. They had 65 reviews. I read this review. I saw myself growing with company name removed, but I would rather chop off a finger than work for a bunch of corporate snakes that cannot sufficiently run a business. That's a pretty intense review to come across. And my recommendation to the parent organization I was working for was we should, this is a fixer-upper when it comes to company culture, and we should reference that as a point for negotiation. And we were able to negotiate a more favorable acquisition price. Fast forward, the acquisition went through, and then I was tasked with working with the executive team on rolling out some employee engagement initiatives to strengthen the morale and productivity of the team. So we rolled out the first engagement survey for this organization, and the star ratings or the sentiment of the survey came back at about a 4-star. So when the score was converted to a 5-star scale, 4-star was how happy everyone was. So how do you account for this company having a 4-star satisfaction rate, but then they're only at a 2.6 star on Glassdoor? Well, in their survey, they had over 55% of people participate, and on Glassdoor, they only had 65 reviews over 11 years, which comes out to a 1% participation rate year over year. So they were having an extreme overrepresentation of negative feedback. When I went to this business for the very first time, I didn't know what to expect. If I would see people, yelling or screaming, throwing things, would I shake someone's hand that was missing a finger? I didn't even know what to expect, but the reality was most people were actually happy, and it was because of this principle of disproportionate representation. And in my book, in the review cycle, I talk about it. It's called the law of self-selecting extremes. So this business, when they were not asking for reviews, they had an overrepresentation of negativity. Only the people that had a way positive or way negative experience were willing to go out of their way to share. But when we make it easier to participate, we lower the barrier to participate and we unlock the silent majority. And that's what drives ratings and reviews up in an authentic and more reliable way. And when we further optimize the way in which we ask for a review, the timing of which we ask for a review, we can unlock even greater participation that becomes even more advantageous for us. So, principle number 2, when you ask for reviews, you get better ratings. That's why you want to ask for reviews. And then the last principle of why we want to ask for reviews is to recognize that there are multiple different stakeholder groups that are referencing our employer reputation. Job seekers are obviously looking at it, current employees, investors, the community, customers, all these different stakeholder groups are impacted by our ratings and reviews. And if you say, well, we don't have any information to say that customers are looking at this or they're not, once you build the momentum of a stronger employer reputation with better ratings and reviews, we can guide that journey. We can point to our employee reviews on our homepage and call attention to it, that it is a point of difference for us and a strength. We can even challenge potential customers or prospects to say, hey, we're a hospital. We have great employee reviews. We're an employer of choice. When you go to select who's going to do that next elective surgery for you, do you want to come to a hospital that's a best place to work and we're confident that our staff loves their job and loves where they work? Or do you want to go to this other hospital down the road that, we know they're below 3 stars? We're not going to say that to be, disparaging, but we can challenge them to go look up the employer ratings and reviews of the alternative, and that will help reinforce their desire to come use our services. So there's definitely more use cases for these employee reviews. So principle number 3 is there are many stakeholder groups that are impacted for better or for worse with your employer ratings, and you simply cannot ignore the impact that they have. So to recap, the why principle: ratings and reviews shape perceptions and directly impact ROI. Number 2, asking for reviews will increase your star ratings. And number 3, employee reviews and ratings impact many stakeholders for better or for worse. Okay, so now we know we need to ask for reviews. It's the number one biggest lever we can pull to protect our employer reputation in this age of showcase culture. Now let's talk about some principles of how. How are we going to do this in practice? So I first want to talk about, this is kind of the law of self-selecting extremes, frequency of asking for reviews. When you don't ask for reviews at all, the number of reviews that you have coming in on your profile may look like this: just a few reviews trickling in week over week. Your star rating may look something like this. Maybe you're around a 3-star, somewhere in the average range, and it's just kind of slowly atrophying over time. It's decreasing slowly. So maybe you come away from this training and you're like, oh man, ratings and reviews are so important. I need to ask for reviews. And you may be tempted to do this, but please do not do this. Do not go blast your entire company and ask for a review, because it's going to do something like this. You're going to have this huge review event happen when a lot of reviews come through in a condensed period of time, and it may actually bump up your star rating, but there's a couple unintended negatives that happen here. One, it can look like we're only doing this for a self-serving purpose. We've never done this. It just comes out of the blue. Hey, everyone, we care about our Glassdoor, or we care about your feedback. Go leave a review. But people can read between the lines and they may assume that you're just trying to do this for a superficial reason to get your ratings and reviews up. And you may actually inadvertently solicit some, what I like to call, revenge reviews. And that's where an employee comes in on all caps. They don't actually care about us. They're just trying to get their ratings up. You can tell because tons of reviews came in all at once and they've never done this. I've seen that type of scenario play out. Another negative from this scenario, well, there's actually two more negatives. One is we could trigger a moderation flag. Glassdoor looks at norms of how often reviews are coming in. And if they see something that is they would view as unnatural, they may disqualify you from Best Place to Work awards where you may otherwise qualify, but they've determined that it feels like manipulation, and so they're going to take you out of the running. And then the last reason why this is not good is Glassdoor and some of these other profile or platforms, they calculate their star rating algorithmically. They give greater weight to the recent reviews, and we've estimated it's as much as 32:1, meaning a review that's 1 month or newer is worth 32 reviews that's a year or older. And so if we get a ton of reviews all at once, we've used up that capacity to ask for reviews, and all those reviews are aging out at the same time. Fast forward a few months, even just a small handful of negative reviews could artificially tank our star rating. And I've seen that displayed star rating vary by even a full star difference from what the actual calculated star rating would be from just a raw average. So we don't want to do this. We want to spread out those review requests to be a little bit more throughout the year. So if you were to do this like a monthly blast and have a small, like 1/12 of your employees included, this would certainly be an improvement, and your star rating would be a little bit more long-term stable growth. Doing weekly batches of review requests would be even better, to where you're starting to smooth things out even more and that star rating is more predictable. And if you have a way to even smooth it out even more to daily, like, this is not to be like salesy, but this is like what we do at Mobrim is this piece. You can do this on your own, but we automate it for you. And you smooth that out to be able to increase the star ratings over time. So this is just an example of what that would look like, of it coming up and then staying up because you continue to ask for reviews instead of just doing this once and then it's a one-time project. Like, you have to care about this on an ongoing basis for the maximum amount of impact. So the how principle number one is you want a drip system. You want to spread those review requests out across time so that you're not throwing moderation flags and using up all of your review capacity at once, and smoothing out the increase or the improvement to your ratings. Step number two, or strategy number two for how to ask for your reviews, is about diversification. So many employer branding strategists, they may feel overwhelmed with all of the things they have to do, identifying the EVP, strategizing for a career page, getting employee stories from people. And so they may end up neglecting some of these employer rating and review sites, simply because there's just so many different things that you can do on these profiles to truly optimize them. And so what happens? They may only focus on one or two review sites, and that can actually create a problem called reputation disparity. And what is reputation disparity? Well, it looks like this. It's where you've got great ratings and reviews on one site and really bad reviews on another site. And then a job seeker sees those side by side and they're scratching their head going, that doesn't really make sense. Isn't this the same company? Why do they have great ratings over here and really bad ratings over here? Is this faked, manipulated, or too good to be true? It's breaking trust in the good ratings, and then it's reinforcing trust in the low ratings, because the job seeker may say, well, this must be the true, unbiased, uncensored voice of employee. And so they're going to trust that. So really, to do this right, we want to diversify our reputation across all of the top key platforms so that we have a more out spread. So maybe it's only like half a star difference. And that's because essentially we're asking for reviews across all of these platforms. Another byproduct of doing that is we can qualify for more awards. Comparably has 12 different Best Place to Work awards that you can qualify for. InHerSite has over 20 different categories. Glassdoor obviously has theirs. And so the principle number two is diversify your requests. You want to send requests to your employees to all of these different platforms, and you can space that out so you're not overwhelming people and getting review fatigue, and you just want to track who you're asking when. Principle number three is, this one's a little bit more straightforward. Include everyone. When we talk to different businesses, it's crazy how many people didn't realize that you can ask your part-time employees, you can ask your interns, you can ask your freelancers, you can even ask contractors. And of course, you can ask all those people that speak different languages if you're a global business. It's not just the full-time employees that are eligible to ask for reviews. You should, and you'll be better off for including all these different individuals because it increases the total number of reviews that you could collect in your program. Principle number 4 is ask on repeat. And this is probably one of the biggest aha moments that we have when we're talking to businesses is the fact that employees can leave one new review every year. Employee reviews are different than customer reviews on Google or Amazon, where it's one and done and that's it. So if you track who you've asked when, you know when you can ask them again 12 months in the future. So as you're tracking your review requests, it's important to mark who you've asked to do a review on which platform, so you know when they're eligible to be asked another time. How principle number 5, you want to make it really easy to share reviews. Put the link in an email, put it in a text, put it through your Slack, and do this on like a one by one. You don't want to do blasts to everyone because it's more difficult to track who participated and who didn't based on, you want to know who you can ask in the future. And if you just send the review request link to your whole company on Slack, that's going to create that negative review event that we don't want. So you're doing this on the communication channel that makes the most sense. Maybe it's a QR code, and definitely make sure that people feel they can do this on the clock, that it's important, and encourage that participation. And then how tip number 6 is around motives. So in my book, I talk about the motives of why people even share reviews. It's an extreme minority of people that write reviews, whether it's a customer review or an employee review. But these are the motives that I was able to uncover from quite a few different research sources. And they can all be bucketed into givers and takers. The most number one common reason why people leave reviews is to give back to the community. People feel they've benefited from reading reviews, whether it's the vacuum on Amazon or the job seeker reading employee reviews. And so they want to pay it forward as well and share a review. So the way in which we word our review request can hit on these intrinsic motives to unlock a greater amount of participation. And here's an example of what that could look like. Hello, employee name, your feedback matters. It helps us continually improve and informs other job seekers what it's like to work here. So right off the bat, we're sharing 2 what's in it for me messages. I should do this because it helps us continually improve, like the company culture, and then helps us hire good people. I like working with good people. So those are 2 things that are in it for me. Then you've got just your straightforward, take a minute to share, emphasis on honest feedback. We don't want to ask for a 5-star specifically, and I'll share a little bit more about that here in a second. And then here we're managing expectations of the repeat nature of the review requests. Since things may change over time, know that your feedback requests like this are ongoing and you may receive similar emails in the future. And then we also want to add something where they can take their concerns privately as well if they want to. So if you have things you'd prefer to share confidentially with our HR team, email us here or simply respond to this message. And that gives them an option to open up a conversation that way as well. Okay, so principle number 6, you want to appeal to motives and really be strategic in the way in which you're asking for reviews. How principle number 7, don't break FTC law. There is an article, a research article that we published on mobrim.com. You can go look it up for free. It's not a gated article. Everyone can read it. But the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, came out with a landmark new legislation last year about this time, actually just more than 1 year ago. And it has very specific things that are now illegal to do when it comes to reviews. They've increased the civil penalties for breaking this new legislation. It's all the way up over 51,000 per instance. So it's not something you want to mess with. It's 100% worth your time to go read that article. It's about a 10 to 15 minute read, simply for the fact that you don't want to put your business at risk. So here are some of the simple high level items to not do to be compliant. Don't create, buy, or sell fake reviews. Believe it or not, there are people that try to do this. The platforms, especially Amazon and Glassdoor, have increased in their sophistication of tracking and proactively blocking these reviews that are fake. Don't even touch anything in that realm. You should be asking for real reviews from real employees. Do not incentivize your reviews. There actually is a way to offer an incentive for reviews if you can publicly disclose that. So you could do that on a Google review, for example, but it is explicitly against the terms of service on Glassdoor and Indeed and the other platforms. So you don't want to do that when it comes to employee reviews. And an additional side note there is if you have employees leaving reviews on sites like Google or Facebook even, they have to disclose that they're an employee in order to be compliant. And then the last piece here that I'll mention right now is do not solicit reviews expressing a particular sentiment. You don't want to do this in your written email. You also don't want your CEO or your managers saying it in person to people. Hey, please go leave a 5-star. That's not good. You need to just ask for an honest review. That article that I mentioned on mobrim.com, it also includes a template company policy that you could add to your handbook for online reviews and testimonials so that you can increase your compliance as well. And then the last couple things here, don't principles. Do not cherry pick. Don't try to figure out who your happy employees are and only ask them for reviews. We also get asked about this one all the time, but let's think logically about this here for a second. You've got 100 employees. You figure 60 of them are happy. You eventually work through your 60 people. And then what are you going to do? You're just not going to ask the other 40 people. Like your employees talk, they're going to have all those break room conversations and say, well, why didn't I get a review request? Do they think I'm not happy? Do they think I'm not a good employee? Well, now you potentially could take an engaged employee and move them to the disengaged side. The narrative to your workforce is so much more powerful when you say everyone's included, everyone's voice matters, everyone gets the chance to share. And honestly, we already learned about this from the law of self-selecting extremes. It's the volume that plays in our favor. And we actually want some of those negatives to come through. Like on the cover of my book, The Review Cycle, it's got a 4.5-star image. That's actually where you have the highest amount of conversions, not 5 stars. When you get too close to 5 stars, it's believed as being faked, manipulated, or too good to be true. And we actually see conversions drop. So we don't want to be afraid of those negatives. We do want to invite everyone to share. And when those negatives come through, we can strategically respond to them to showcase a high level of care. And those negatives paired with that strategic response can actually increase conversions, increase the number of job seekers that are applying to our jobs. And then I think, this is the last one. So how principle number 9, don't compromise anonymity. So as you're tracking who you've asked for reviews when, it could be really tempting to try to figure out who wrote which review. Just don't even go there. Whether you guess right or you guess wrong, neither of those is going to end happy. If you guess right, you've completely shattered the trustworthiness of your entire review request program, and you may end up getting someone who's disengaged to do things that are even more extreme on the vein of disparagement, and you don't want that. If you guess wrong and you approach someone who's actually engaged and happy, and you've accused them of posting a negative review, well, now you're going to take that engaged employee to the disengaged category, and they may end up leaving or spreading poison to your coworker, to other coworkers as well. So it's just not good. You don't want to go there. When you're replying to reviews, just assume you don't know who it is always, even if you think you may, and respond to that with everyone else as your target audience. That's who you're writing your review to, not to the actual reviewer as the primary audience, because you're trying to influence everyone else that sees that conversation. So just as a recap here of the do's and don'ts for how to respond to reviews, we want a drip system, spread those review requests across time, diversify across platforms, and the top 4 that we've seen that are most important include Glassdoor, Indeed, Comparably, and InHerSite. There are a few additional ones out there. If you're in the UK, Kununu is important. If you're in Canada, Rate My Employer is important. But in the US, those are your top 4, Glassdoor, Indeed, Comparably, and InHerSite. Make sure you're including everyone, ask on repeat, make it easy, appeal to motives. And then on the don'ts, don't break FTC law, don't cherry pick, and don't compromise anonymity. So as we get to this last section of the training here, we're going to go through 6 specific steps to just get started. This is like your checklist to apply what you've learned here today. Number 1 is you want to do an initial reputation audit. you want to essentially draw the line in the sand of where you're starting from. You want to go through all of your profiles, take a screenshot, document where you're starting from. And that's essentially really important for you as an employer brand professional, because it's going to be your proof of the positive impact that you've implemented for the organization. So it's really important to do that. The next one is assign ownership. You need to figure out who's going to manage this process. Are you doing all the review requests? Is that the internal comms team? Is that HR? Depending on how your organization is set up, that could look differently, but typically we see HR and marketing at least involved in this process. Those are the two groups that coordinate the most. And when you're the employer brands expert, you're kind of living in both worlds and sometimes brokering some of those conversations, but you need to clearly decide who's going to own this process. The next one is create a request tracking sheet. So this is very simple. You just have all of your employee names right there, your platforms across the top, and you're just listing the dates that you asked an employee for which platform. And that's going to help inform the next year when you can ask them. So like Abe Braham, I had a lot of fun making up these names, John Athen. You can see that John Athen is eligible to ask for a review 1 year later in June. And then this document does need to be secured because it does kind of become a confidentiality risk. If someone were to get this and spread that around the organization, that could potentially be very negative. And so you really have to make sure that you keep this document under lock and key for the sake of trust in your review request program. Step number 4 is design your review request templates. You don't want to be writing out a new review request every time you send someone to a new employee. So craft a really well-worded template, and then you're going to be copying and pasting those when it's time to send out a review request. Step number 5, establish a schedule for yourself to send those review requests. And maybe you just have a reoccurring task on your calendar, depending on what you feel you can handle. Is it once a month? Is it once a week? And then spread out those batches of employees to fit the number of requests that you should be sending out to hit your targets, to spread out those requests across the year. And then the last one is monitor your profiles daily. You don't want to just ask for reviews and then ignore everything that comes in, because that's kind of like sending out a survey and then not even looking at the results. You want to be responsive. You want to watch for new reviews, interview reviews, benefit reviews, and Q&As coming in across your profiles, and then respond to them as needed. Don't feel like you need to reply as urgently as customer service responding on X, for example. This is not the same timeline or urgency. We typically recommend, if you're responding within a week of the posted date of the review, that's honestly best practice. If you can do within 1 or 2 days, that's also great. But you don't want to let things sit for a really long time. You want to showcase that you're responsive and that you truly care and value about your employee feedback. So those are the 4 things to just recap to get your get started checklist here. Start with the reputation audit, assign ownership, create a request tracking sheet, create your review request templates, set reminders to send review requests, and then monitor those profiles and respond to those reviews. And for anyone that's here, because we really value this community, we're actually doing that reputation audit for you for free. So just, you can actually click on that or message me. My contact info is at the end, and we can do that step for you absolutely free, so you can see the health of where things are at right now, and that can kick off your efforts, and you can share that information with your team as well. So that's the whole presentation, and happy to answer any questions that anybody has around reviews. Have any chats come in that we should hit on, Michael?
We don't have anything that's come in as of yet, but I've got a couple questions. So, there's a lot to manage when it comes to these sites, right? With your reputation and going out there and looking at it daily. What do you do if somebody does put something negative? Let's say a candidate had a bad experience. Do you address that? What's your advice on addressing negative reviews from candidates?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll mention 2 things here. The first is, which reviews should we respond to? And that includes all the negatives. We want to respond to all the negatives. Any review that has some type of a question where we could act as a moderator to clarify information. And then we also want to respond to some of those positives as well to showcase that we care about the happy people too, not just the disgruntled people. So that's a key piece. In my book, I talk about a case study done by Cambridge University where they looked at the financial impact on hotels and the rate of bookings they were receiving through TripAdvisor. And they found that as a hotel responded to 40% about of their reviews, they were doubling their booking rates. But as they responded to increased amount, like 80%, was back down to they may as well have done nothing. And if they were responding to 100% of their reviews, they were actually damaging their booking rates. And I believe that to be because you're kind of the helicopter parent at the teenager party. If you're like over engaging, like this is a social media space of sorts, and we want to let the community influence the community. So we want to show up where it matters. And so that's why we want to respond to all of the negatives, anything that has a question in there, and then some of the positives, but not every review. And then for those negatives, we want to directly address those concerns that have come up. We want to discredit negative claims if there's some false information or misinformation. If we agree with misinformation, then we're passively agreeing with it, and that can be detrimental to us. If you go read chapter 4 of the review cycle, you can get like a little bit more detailed strategy, but that's kind of the high level. Is you want to obviously be kind, have kind of a passive journalistic tone, and then directly address that negative concern and address any misinformation as well.
All right. Lucas asked another really good question here. What if a evaluation has the name of someone, like a leader or a bad leader?
Yeah. If it's the name of an executive, it is allowed with the terms of service, and that review will stay posted. If it is the name of a manager or another employee, that actually breaks terms of service on Glassdoor, and you can report it for moderation, and there's a good chance that it will be removed. I would say you don't want to habitually do that because they see the frequency of you requesting like these moderation requests, and they're very quick to just ignore you if you're just habit reporting every negative that you don't like. So you have to go read the terms of service, or just go Google Glassdoor community guidelines, and you'll see there's a bulleted list of things that are not allowed in the reviews. So in the case that it is an executive, a bad leader named by it, like they're listed, you want to respond to that review. And same thing, we want to address it head on. We want to discredit any negative claims if there's any misinformation. If there literally was something that's verifiable that they did that was wrong, then you probably just have to own it, but don't do it in a way that's really detrimental to yourself. Like minimize the negativity that you're saying about your own company. Like instead of saying we're sorry for the horrible experience you had, we can say we're sorry for the experience you had.
All right, good stuff. A couple more questions here I'm going to throw at you. What is a good rating on like Glassdoor these days? I mean, is it 3.5, 3.8? What's like a
Yeah.
good rating?
So, the middle of the bell curve is 3.73. That's the platform average on Glassdoor. The average CEO approval rating is 73%. So if you're above or below, that kind of gives you a gauge of how you're comparing. You're definitely going to be optimized at that 4.5-star rating. So anywhere from like 4.3 to 4.8 is great. You may be a 4.9 or 5.0 if you're a really small organization and you have a few reviews, but over time with the mass of reviews coming through, we actually would love to be more in that 4.5-star range.
Yeah, it seems like those are hard to come by. What about, layoffs, right? You have a bunch of layoffs that happen and people go out there and put stuff out there on Glassdoor or maybe even on Reddit. That's kind of a new thing now.
Yep.
A lot of people go to Reddit and they really just put all kinds of things about their experience with the company, especially after a layoff. Is there a strategy you need to take, knowing maybe your internal comms and HR, knowing that there's a layoff coming that you might want to have prepared?
Yeah, great question. I would say your efforts to maximize your reviews should be kind of this never-ending pursuit. It's the long game play. And if you know that there's layoffs in the future, ideally we would have already been asking for reviews, but we would want to start as soon as we can to build up that momentum to where when the layoffs hit, we're not tanking as hard. Like one of our clients went through this exact scenario and they'd been asking for reviews for quite a while. And then they had some layoffs and they only dropped zero point 0.2 stars instead of, if they've been doing nothing, they would have had no insulation there and they could have dropped a star or even more. And so the time to prepare is now for anything in the future. Another thing I would say about Reddit, you mentioned Reddit. There's also, I think it's layoffs.com, which can be really negative. You can't really win on a site that the nature of it and what people expect to see is negative. Like there's a site called pissedconsumer.com, for example, SiteJabber. There are entire platforms that are engineered to only be negative. And so you kind of just have to let them be what they are and be aware and track so you know what's going on, but then offset that with reliable, good employer content on Glassdoor and Indeed and Comparably and in her site. Because if you go engage on Reddit, it's just kind of like poking the bear. You kind of just have to let it be what it is and then keep the focus on the things that are aggregated and reliable that you can systematically do.
Awesome. Got another one here. It says, I understand that it's important to establish, or from Lucas, by the way, I understand that it's important to establish a standard time to ask for reviews, but is there a more specific time when asking for reviews would be recommended?
Okay. So Lucas, you can clarify if you have details here, but like we get asked about like time of day of week. Do you ask for reviews after someone's received a raise or like triggering the timing around different events or times where people are, yeah. Okay. So like an event or so. Our philosophy at Mobrium is we just want it completely random and spread out across the year. And we give more attention to the drip system than we do to try to time a review request for a certain employee around a certain event, simply because we value the drip system more than maybe getting one person to rate a little higher because we happen to ask for a review after a raise. But also, just like consumers are more sophisticated, employees are more sophisticated, and some people may kind of read between the lines when they may feel like we're gaming the system. Oh, I just got a raise. Now they're asking me for a review. And that may solicit a revenge review where they actually love it there, but they think you're doing that in a disingenuous way. So if you have your review request just always running in the background and it's just, hey, we just do this at random and it's never ending, it doesn't feel like there's any alternative motive. You're doing it as a best practice to collect feedback habitually.
All right, very interesting. All right, we're almost here at time. For recruiters that have been doing this for a long time, you might remember some things like I think the Vault was back then where people used to go and put all kinds of information about their company, what it was like, to be there. I do remember message boards like Yahoo would have sort of these message boards for companies that were publicly traded, and people would go in there and put all kinds of stuff, and that actually would impact they would impact the stock by talking about how the company was being poorly managed and stuff like that. So they did turn off a lot of those things, and some of these sites went away. And I think this has been really good information because even way back then, we were aware of like what people were saying on the web, on sites like that would have an impact to the business. And this has been really good. You talked about how the FTC is stepping in and trying to control a little bit more about the fake reviews, which I think is I don't know, maybe I think that is very common. And, you mentioned some other good things in there too about your reputation having an impact on the overall business. So it's not something that you can take lightly. You have to address it. You have to, as an employer brand person, have to partner with the right teams in order who's ever going to own this, right? So a lot of really good information here. I really appreciate your time, Matt. You've got your contact information there. So everybody that's watching that can get in touch with you. And yeah, this has been amazing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Great questions, Lucas, as well. And yeah, really Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
All right. This has been great. And for those that are watching, I will definitely have the recording available here pretty soon. And if you want to get in touch with Matt and maybe have his presentation, please reach out to him and you can get his PowerPoint, or I'm sorry, his information presentation to you. So thank you so much, Matt. And we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good. We'll see you.
All right. Thanks.